It's 7 o'clock. I just want to check in. Are we waiting for, okay. We're ready to go? Great, thank you. Welcome to the September 23rd City Council. I'm going to call this meeting to order now with a roll call. Visual check, Councilmember Candell is out. All right. Vice Mayor Kwok.
Present.
Councilmember Andori.
Present.
Councilmember McCormick.
Present.
And I am present, and Councilmember Candell is out in excused absence. So we will start this meeting and move on to adoption of the agenda.
Move adoption of the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so the agenda is adopted, and we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Thank you. Okay, are there public comments that are for items that are not on the agenda?
This is an opportunity for members of the public in attendance here to speak on items that are not on the agenda. And I do have 2 speaker slips. I'll call you to the podium and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first speaker is Peter Lingane.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Peter Lingane. I lived at 852 Ocampo Drive for slightly over 40 years. So the passage of Measure H should allow us to fund the anticipated budget deficits over the next decade or so. But Measure H will not allow us to fund important unmet needs in our community. In particular, 3 staff positions will not be funded. The Campana property will not be redeveloped for parking. The costly repairs to the community center will not be done, and there will be no more road construction, no increased road construction. So how can we maybe take the new resources and create opportunities to fund these unmet obligations? Well, fortunately, there are a couple of revenue things that I don't think we've considered yet. One is we could sell the community center property. 8 acres, prime residential area, doubtless bring in millions of dollars, and it would also avoid millions of dollars in high-vac repairs and repaving. Second, Lafayette does not receive our full 1% from the sales tax. Now, we could accept underpayment of $1 million a year passively, or we could marshal our resources, especially our citizens, to change the rules. Now, there's more than one way to balance a budget, of course. Revenue is one way, and the other is to look at expenses. And I think we should scour the budget for low priority items that could be better used for other purposes. For example, the Spirit Van program. It costs $58 a ride, and I checked. That's 2 or 3 times the price Uber or Lyft would charge to go to Martinez. And it also duplicates the Contra Costa Link program. A few years ago, we saved $45,000 by outsourcing 1 facilities maintenance position. How much do you suppose we'd save if we could find 10 positions to outsource? So My request to you today is to, that was my cut my throat off. Do I have another 10 seconds? I'd like to suggest referral to this finance subcommittee to suggest first, a council pledge to fund Lafayette's important unmet needs within a reasonable timeframe. Such a measure should increase the chances of Measure H passing. Second, directing staff to explore options to scrub future budgets of low priority expenditures. And third, repurposing some of the money budgeted for planning to evaluate outsourcing, the sale of the community center, and how Lafayette might achieve our full 1% of the sales tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lingane. And thank you also. I know you've attended the finance subcommittee. I appreciate that you attended the finance subcommittee meeting as well. So we'll take that into consideration.
Next speaker is Doug Gardner.
Hello, my name is Doug Gardner. I live at 3526 Boyer Circle. I'm here to bring further attention to continued parking violations by neighbors living at 3562 and 3661 Boyer Circle after the city of Lafayette has painted lines and posted no parking signs around the entire circle. These neighbors are the cause of the no parking action taken by the city of Lafayette due to their unwillingness to work with all other neighbors on the street for a solution. These two families continue to illegally park their cars on the street and do so flagrantly, openly, and without concern during both the day and at night, as they know the city of Lafayette parking enforcement does not work past 6 p.m. The entire situation is unfortunate for all involved. Specific neighbors on Boyer Circle took complaints to the city of Lafayette about these two families parking cars in areas where emergency vehicles could not pass. Against the opinions of many neighbors, the city of Lafayette unilaterally decided to ban all parking on Boyer Circle without providing any concrete solutions that impact everybody on Boyer Circle, except for the two families who continue to defy both the wishes of their neighbors and now the law. With knowledge of the parking ban, several families have spent thousands of dollars to create parking spaces on their own property. The residents of 3562 and 3661 Boyer Circle have ample on-property parking, yet they continue to park on the street in a direct, purposeful, and obstinate manner. Despite calls to Lafayette Police Department for enforcement, these families' cars are not being ticketed, and they will continue to be emboldened without ramifications that only the city of Lafayette can administer. We have been informed that the property owner at 3661 Boyer Circle will continue to park on the street no matter how many parking tickets he receives. These two families continue to benefit from on-street parking despite the law, and the city of Lafayette must take action or allow for on-street parking for all property owners on Boyer Circle. This double standard leaves all of us unable to park on Boyer Circle as all other property owners are adhering to the law, while these two families continue to believe that they are above the law by parking on the street without repercussions. Additionally, in the rush to ban parking on Boyer Circle, the city of Lafayette has not provided any guidance to property owners related to on-street parking options for contractors, holidays, and any other situations where homeowners will have no choice but to have temporary on-street parking. I have provided all of you with photos of these two cars parked in the same areas on the street and at the two of the most narrow points of the circle. I asked the city of Lafayette to either enforce this law or reinstate parking on Boyer Circle. A lack of enforcement is beyond the control of the property owners on Boyer Circle and creates a situation where the needs of the many are outweighed by flagrant behaviors of the few, specifically our neighbors at 3562 and 3661 Boyer Circle.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. In the meantime, are there any questions or comments for the speaker? Okay.
Just for reference, that's 3661 Boyer Circle. That's 3562 Boyer Circle. And this was last night with 2 cars trying to navigate going through there, just as we were walking our dogs.
Thank you. I know this came before council, as you mentioned, and we made some decisions and have considered that. So I thank you for bringing this back to our attention.
No worries.
We made those decisions based on making sure it was good access, especially for our first responders. So I appreciate you coming to
No
comment.
worries. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
We have one speaker in our virtual audience, Mario DePrisco. You can speak.
Hi, can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you, John. Mayor, council members, staff, good evening. Mario DePrisco, 3959 Happy Valley Road. As our city administrator recently stated in our weekly roundup, Lafayette has been in a structural deficit for years. And it has only been thanks to windfalls from the federal government, the Moraga developer payments, and understaffing that our budgets have been nominally balanced. Measure H, if it passes, is only for 7 years.
Mr. DePrisco,
So-
I'm sorry, we
yeah.
can't hear you very well.
Okay, all right. Let me try without headphones.
You may be getting feedback if you have a computer or something open.
Now, okay?
Yes, it sounds better.
Okay. All right, I'll try again. Mayor, council members, or do you want to start at 3 again? I could probably do it in 2. Mayor, council members, staff, good evening. Mario DePrisco, 3959 Happy Valley Road. As our city administrator recently stated in our weekly roundup, Lafayette has been in a structural deficit for years, and it has only been thanks to windfalls from the federal government, the Moraga developer payment, and understaffing that our budgets have been nominally balanced. Measure H, if it passes, is only for 7 years. So there is an urgent need for plans to either cut expenses or increase revenue. I know some work has been done by staff around expenses, but I encourage council and staff to begin work today on 2 tracks. One task force looking into reducing expenses structurally, so not just taking 10% off every department, and another one looking at increasing revenues, because some of those plans could take years to gestate. I encourage real community involvement to get as many perspectives and ideas out as possible. Our community is blessed with talent and a diversity of perspectives, and all should be welcome in this important challenge. Regardless of the outcome in November, I volunteer my time, and I'm sure many others will join me. 7 years seems like a long way off, but it is never too early to start necessary work. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. DePrisco. I just want to mention that we have been working on options to look at this deficit, which is why we have brought Measure H to the people. It's on the ballot for them to make a decision. So I appreciate your feedback. And I just want to correct that the federal funds was not a windfall. That was COVID relief funds that all cities, had a need for and small businesses. So thank you.
I have no additional speakers at this time, Mayor Dawson.
Thank you. With that, we will move to the city manager's update.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and people in the audience here and virtually. Department updates for the last 2 weeks. From engineering and public works, we were all there. We had the most amazing art and wine festival over the weekend, and public works is doing what it does best, which is cleaning up after a very, very busy festival. So our crew has been out there cleaning up the downtown and removing the barricades. Additionally, as we complete the punch list items for the summer's roadway projects, we've also started to work on the final designs for next year's projects, which you will see as part of your next year's budget. And the city's contractor continues to work on the storm drain project that traverses a Moraga Boulevard property near Victoria Avenue. From Senior Services, a reminder that This Saturday from 8:30 to noon at the Veterans Hall. The Community Foundation will be holding the annual Senior Symposium, and you can register online. From administration, as you all know, and perhaps some of you have received, the city sent out an informational brochure about Measure H. On November the 5th, Lafayette voters will be asked if they want to approve a local sales tax of ½ cent for a period of 7 years to provide funding to maintain the current level of services. So that voters can be informed, we mailed out an informational brochure, which we heard at the Art and Wine Festival, and many residents had already received. Also want to encourage people to visit our website at lovelafayette.org/Measure H. And if community members have any questions about Measure H, they should send an email to LafayetteListens@lovelafayette.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any public comments?
No public comments at this time, Mayor Dawson.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the presentation, starting with the La Miranda Arts Council.
Good evening. I'm Sue Farmer, and this is Ali Kozel, who's our managing director, and I'm president of the Arts Council. And I'm looking forward to telling you about our organization and all the things we do in the arts for Lafayette, Orinda, and Moraga. We have, we're all, practically all of us are volunteers, and we have visual arts for all of the high schools. And then we do 2D and 3D and photography and digital art. And then we have prizes for the kids, which they, of course, love. And in addition to that, we have an extensive music program, which is my favorite because I'm a musician, as John knows. So we have children from kindergarten through high school that enter. So we sort of scale it down by having them first perform in the schools. And we have judges. I've been one of the judges for years. And then we choose those that are, you might say, most ready to perform in front of an audience. And, they learn more than music. They learn how to speak in front of an audience and gain self-esteem. So that is one of our very successful programs, and we just finished having them sing at the Orinda Theater. So it's been going on ever
called La
since.
Miranda Idol.
Yeah, La Miranda Idol. Ever since American Idol on the TV, we kind of played off that program. And right across the way here, we have writers get together with artists, and 4 times a year we have Art Embraces Words, which also includes poetry. And we're very grateful to the Lafayette Foundation, which makes that possible for us. And the programs are really extensive that we have all year long. And so Ali's going to tell you about our fundraiser, because everything takes money. So we have to raise funds. And next month is our big fundraiser called Mixology, where we have, she'll tell you about it.
Yeah, so our annual fundraising event, this is our 11th year. It's called Art of Mixology, and it takes place this year on Saturday, October 19th from 4:30 to 7 p.m. in Orinda Theater Square Promenade. And it's a celebration of handcrafted cocktails and this year new mocktails, or as the young crowd calls them, non-alcs, where local professional and amateur bartenders compete for cash prizes and trophies, and then, of course, the honor of being named Mixologist of the Year. And we always expect or hope to expect about 250 attendees. And it's a lot of fun because the bartenders really get into it. They wear costumes and they come up with cute and fun names for their cocktails. We have an art of table staging category, and so they really go all out. And it's a really fun community event where we can come together and celebrate the arts and support the La Miranda Art Council programming. And so we just wanted to present today to make sure that you all and the citizens of Lafayette are aware of La Miranda Arts Council, and we hope that they will attend our fundraising event because it's a lot of fun. So we put the fun in fundraising.
And I have to mention that in addition to the cocktails, which we provide, we have about 20 bartenders. Maybe it's 18 this year, but, and it's in Theater Square. We also do a flash mob, right? And so Justin Cole, who has a dance school in Moraga, well, he sent us videos to give us a little practice so we can get up there and dance towards the end of the event. So I hope some of you will come or help us spread the word. And thank you so much for letting us tell you about the Arts Council tonight. I have to ask, do any of you have children who have entered or know about, your neighbor has entered any of the music programs or the art programs? It's for adults as well. We have 2 galleries. One's in Orinda and the other's in Wilder. Any of you been involved with the Arts Council? Okay, it's good we came today because now you know about us, right? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue and Holly. Are there any questions? Oh, Councilmember McCormick has a question
Thank
for you.
Just a question or comment. I think it's important. Thank you very much for all the work you do. I think it's important to note that La Miranda Idol takes over when we do the Friday concerts in the park. La Miranda Idol has got the last Friday of the summer, and this year was just packed with people watching and cheering all the singers on. So it was a great, very positive event. So we thank you very much for letting us host one of your concerts. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for what your organization does, bringing arts and events to our larger community. So appreciate the work. And our next presentation is Thomas Adams for the sales tax.
Thomas
performance
is
and
joining
comparisons.
us virtually, and he's being promoted to a panelist so he can share his screen with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Tom Adams. I'm with Avenue Insights and Analytics, also referred to as Muni Services, your sales tax consultant. I have a brief presentation to give you on the state of sales tax in Lafayette. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. Oops. Okay, we're going to go through Q1 data today. This is the January, February, March period. Some comments about recent statewide trends. Overall, sales tax has been flat or negative for most of 2023 and the first 2 quarters of 2024. Some of the reasons for this are statewide sales tax from retail purchases have been slowing or declining due to a shift from consumers purchasing taxable goods towards more non-taxable services. And you might see this as to a certain extent as a hangover from some of the cumulative high levels of high inflation. Similar wide sales tax from restaurants and markets is, well, actually, this is the one area that we have seen a little bit of growth has stabilized into low single-digit growth. We might look at this as sort of kind of reaching perhaps its new normal on the restaurants and markets side. In terms of new and used autos, which I should say the city does not really have this area, but also service stations. We did see some higher than normal prices in 2022. So we've been comparing back to the normal prices, and that has led to some lower numbers in 2023 and for the first quarter we'll look at today. Finally, statewide construction and B2B sales tax have been declining as the economy overall has been cooling a bit with higher than normal interest rates over the past few years. Look at some of the kind of recent history here. I'm not going to spend too much time on the macro information on the top part of the slide in terms of what's been going on with some various events, including the Ukraine war and those sorts of things, which pushed up energy prices, some of the pandemic recovery, which has sort of been pushing up sort of things. Just a couple of the items I wanted to highlight here are the federal funds rate. The second line is what where the Federal Reserve sets rates for interest rates for banks borrowing overnight money, and this then trickles down into the rest of the economy. Those rates much higher. Recently, we did have some good news last week that the Federal Reserve, this week I guess it was, last about a week ago, the Federal Reserve started easing those rates, and we expect that to continue. Inflation is the other thing I wanted to. We have seen that sort of ramp up into 7, 8, almost all the way up to 9% levels. That has since come back down to the more kind of typical. It's kind of in the 2% to 3% range, and the expectation is that should get down. Fed likes to see it at 2% within the next 3-6 months. If we're looking at cash, this is the most important aspect of sales tax for the city, is kind of what cash is coming in through the door. Again, we can see the last 6 quarters here. We can see those negative numbers. In most of these quarters, we did have one quarter that was a little bit higher a few quarters back. But overall, this mirrors most of the results seen sort of statewide. At the bottom, we can see that the numbers have either been close to flat or negative for most of the last year and a half. What drives sales tax within the city of Lafayette itself? Primary drivers are restaurants, create about a quarter of the sales tax. Retail, about a fifth, as we can see there, 19%. We have something called the county pool, which
Thomas, we can't hear you right now. I think you are muted.
18% as well.
There you Thomas, can you start at the top of this slide? We lost you for a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just the slide you're on. Yeah, if you could start.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, some of the primary sales tax drivers for the city are restaurants at 25%, retail at 19%, internet and other sort of non-local transactions, 19%, food and liquor markets, as you can see, 14%, and gas stations and auto repair at 13%. Some of the smaller segments that generate sales tax for the city are construction at 5%, B2B transactions at 4%, and other miscellaneous is 1%. We're looking through time in terms of the last, say, 6 years. These are what we call benchmark years that are the year ending the quarter shown. The most recent quarter on the far left over here, I mean, on the far right, pardon me, we can see that in terms of total receipts, we are kind of nearing, or we are at an all-time high at about 3.4 million for these 4 quarters. Part of the reason is that second line, we're about 600,000 for net pools. The local businesses is slightly down from a year ago. We were at about 2.8. We're now just shy of 2.8. As you can see there. Some of the individual drivers, as you can see, retail and food, restaurants at an all-time high here. Transportation has come down, and again, this is kind of largely due to the prices for gas coming down a bit. That's part of the reason for that decline. A little bit of decline in the construction and B2B areas, as I mentioned, sort of mirroring the state's overall softening for those two sectors. So I mentioned before, restaurants about 31% of overall, local business tax about 25% of total. We look at your most recent quarter as well as your most recent 4-quarter annual period. We can see both of these are negative numbers up top, about 50,000 down for the year. We can see that some of the declining segments for the year are retail down about 17,000, transportation down about 21,000, construction down about 15, and B2B down about 7. You can also see, again, just the relative size of these different parts of your sales tax economy. Food products, as you can see, including restaurants and markets, a little over half of your sales tax from local businesses. These are businesses within the city itself generate about half, retail being the next largest at 22%. Transportation 16%, and construction and B2B both fairly small in that 4 to 5% level. Okay, what are we looking at into the future? If we look at our crystal ball, we see Lafayette looking at staying around similar rates going forward. Most of that recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic has occurred, and we're kind of getting back towards what we might consider to be a new normal. We're looking at a slight growth for next fiscal year. We're looking at about 3.425. And you can see kind of out into the future, kind of in that kind of 1% to 2% growth rates annually going forward. We can see a visual of sort of what's been going on recently in the yellow here. We can see that dip during the pandemic. We can see that recovery, sort of for Lafayette, sort of a V-shaped looking recovery. That has since sort of slowed down and actually declined a little bit for some of those reasons I discussed earlier. The gray parts are projections on our part, and you can see that sort of getting back to what we might consider a more normalized growth pattern going forward. Some of our forecast looking forward, still some uncertainty in the economy. You've seen some market volatility overall recently within the last couple months. There is still a possibility for a recession. So far, we've sort of been pulling off what is sometimes referred to as the soft landing. But there's still some uncertainty. Recession is still a potential scenario out there, probably not the primary one if you ask most economists, but still potential. Inflation rates have been coming down closer, as I mentioned before, to this Federal Reserve's desired inflation rate of 2%. However, at the same time, unemployment has been creeping up. So we saw last week the Federal Reserve started to cut. It's likely the Federal Reserve will continue to cut rates into the middle of next year. We should be getting down into about 3.5, something like that for the federal funds rate. We are anticipating this to add some energy back into the economy and help the overall economy. In terms of California, has its own sort of dynamic and trends. We have seen some population shifts away from sort of coastal areas to inland and out of state. Those appear, for the most part, to be sort of ending. Those were a result of reactions to the pandemic, as well as sort of cost of living considerations. Overall, statewide costs continue to remain high for housing, energy, and other essentials. And these high costs, to a certain extent, have eroded some of the overall sort of consumer capacity for taxable sales. As I mentioned throughout, we've had kind of 4 years of turbulence related to the pandemic. We're still sort of waiting to kind of reach when the dust completely settles and we kind of have that kind of new normal period where we sort of turn the corner from some of those negative numbers we've been seeing to more kind of what we would consider to be typical growth rates we'd seen pre-pandemic. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from the council.
Thank you. I'll take questions. Councilmember McCormick?
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. Quite interesting. I just have a clarification on slide 4. I just want to understand that slightly better, because I'm just trying to understand when you're here looking at what, Lafayette, this order and the magnitude seems familiar of what we've seen in the past years. I'm just kind of want to drill down. So I understand right now, Orinda and Moraga have sales tax rates that are 1% higher than Lafayette's. I am surprised just looking at this, the ratio of our cash that we get between Orinda and Moraga. This is actually taking their entire sales tax revenue, or is it just looking at are we just looking at the kind of the 8.75% part of it? I'm just surprised. I would expect they would be significantly higher than us, or higher relative to us after their sales tax increase.
Yeah, good question. So this is just what we call the Bradley Burns 1% revenue. It does not include the 1% that Moraga has as an additional add-on. So additional add-on is about double what you see from their Bradley Burns. Line number 19 here, you see about 1.3. That is from the 1% that they receive. They receive an additional from their local voter approved 1% measure, which creates about an additional $2.6 million for them.
Got it. And I'm assuming the same thing then for Walnut Creek, who passed a measure last year. I see their rates didn't go up, but I guess that's obviously because we're looking at the class. I am curious, maybe the next time you come before us, it'd be nice. Is it possible to show us both? Because it'd be kind of curious to get a sense on overall income we're actually getting from the sales tax, because it's, it would underplay it, I think, if we were just seeing this number.
Yes, of course. But should the measure pass in November, we would receive the data for both their track and allocation methodologies, but we would be happy to provide both. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Could I follow up question? Just to confirm, in this chart on slide 4, the Lafayette numbers under most recent 4 quarters total, and then for April 23 through May 24, that 3,396,000, that's everything that Lafayette gets from sales tax revenue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The number for Orinda, the number for Moraga, that only reflects the basic 1% Bradley Burns amount.
That's correct.
And you were saying that their 1%, let's take Orinda's case, their additional 1% brings them another did you say 2.4 or 2.6?
I just have Moraga's number. I don't have Orinda's in front of me. Moraga's number is about double of what they receive. So for every sales tax dollar through Bradley Burns that we see here, the state 1%, they receive about $2 from their own locally approved voter tax.
Okay, so they are receiving roughly 3.9 million as a result of having the 1% sales tax increase.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Sorry, there was one more. Just this is a little slightly less or probably easier question. On slide 6, when we talked about food products and you have restaurants broken out on that category, I was just wondering, is the other part of that just grocery store amounts? Is that how to understand that?
Yes, grocery stores is another segment within the food products category. Liquor stores are a third segment within the food products category.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I just want to say thank you to Thomas, and I want to see if there's public comments.
Mayor Dawson, I have no speaker slips for persons in the community hall, and I have no hands raised in our virtual audience.
Okay, thank you for that. Then Thomas, thank you very much. And I appreciate the questions by fellow council members. That would be good to include that number next time so we could look here comparatively at the other cities in terms of their additional tax, just to do that comparison. So thank you very much for the work and the presentation.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We will move to the consent calendar. Are there any items you pulled?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 10B.
Okay,
And I would like to pull 10A.
yes, thank you. All right. Then do we have a motion to adopt with the exception of 10A and 10B? Oh, and anybody in the public like to make any adjustments to the consent calendar?
I see none, Mayor Dawson.
Okay.
And I'll move approval of items 10C and 10D on the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, item 10C and 10D?
Aye.
I am an aye, so those pass, and we will move to those removed items later in the meeting. And we'll now move to item 13, our public hearings with Patrick Golier, our Transportation Program Manager, for consideration of a parking permit program on Carroll Lane. Oh, Mike Moran. Thank you.
So, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Patrick had planned to be here, had to pull out, unable to be here this evening. So I am pinch hitting. I am very familiar with this item. I was present at the Transportation and Circulation Commission when this item was before them, and they approved it for referral to this council. So this is about a parking permit program, residential parking permit program. Staff has received a residential request for a portion of Carroll Lane to be added to the residential parking permit program. And this would be the segment of Carroll Lane from Mount Diablo Boulevard to Marlene. So it's a very short section. There's a couple businesses and a couple homes on each side of the road there. This would impact just a total of 6 homes if we were to implement this permit program. Currently, there is 2-hour parking weekdays, 9 to 5 at this location. And this is not new. This has historically been, literally for decades, a 2-hour parking zone. So at one corner, you have Ace Hardware, then you have some offices, and then you have a couple residential homes. And across the street, you have the car wash and the swim school, and then same thing, a few homes. So that's the area we're talking about. It has been 2-hour parking for, as I said, a long time. So staff evaluated this and thought that there wouldn't be really a negative change or impact to the overall parking scheme if we were to allow the parking program. And there was that recommendation put to the Transportation Circulation Commission. Again, if every household participated in the program, it would be 1 permit each, and that'd be 6 parking permits through the weekdays 9 to 5 time frame. So we have received 3 written public comments that the council may have seen. One was from a proponent from a household in favor, and this would impact their household, and they would probably partake in the program should it pass. And then one from the car wash and another from the Park Hotel. And reading through the letters, it does not seem that the car wash nor the Park Hotel is necessarily against this residential parking permit program for these 6 households, but they did have concerns with 2-hour parking and the 2-hour parking being enforced. So I'd just like to point out again that it's been 2-hour parking for quite some time, and this item does not address the 2-hour parking. It's not to change anything other than to add an exception for the residents that live there so they could park in front of their homes, basically. So the staff report has a resolution attached. Since the staff report made it to the council, we did receive comment from our city attorney's office to add one thing into item 3 of the resolution under the now therefore, the City Council of the City of Lafayette, California hereby resolves as follows. There's 1, 2, and 3. On item 3, which is discussing the things that need to be in place before this could be effective. The residents have to take a permit, the police have to be informed. City Attorney's offices would like us to add signs giving adequate notice have been placed. And of course, we would have been doing that, but wanted that language also added into the resolution. So the staff recommendation is that you adopt the resolution as amended that would include the phrase signs giving adequate notice have been placed into that item 3. And that's my report. Happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for pinch hitting. Questions? Councilmember Andore?
I'll start off. Are you aware of the level of enforcement over the years of the 2 hour?
So
parking?
I'm really not, but based on the public comment, it seems that it's been inconsistent. I do know for a fact that a household or two along this stretch, I'm going to say 2016, 2017, did receive citations. I also know that we lessened our enforcement citywide when COVID hit. And I don't know that it's been re-upped to, full force, so to speak. So I can't speak to that. The comments we got made it seem like it maybe is inconsistent, but I'm sorry, I don't have specifics on that. Other than I know those things. I know it has been enforced there before because I know personally someone who's gotten cited there. And I know that we did back off during COVID, and I don't know what it's looked like since then. Other than this request came when I believe a resident was recently cited. So maybe if it's the upswing in enforcement happened, and that's why the push for this request.
Oh, sorry, wait.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Mike. A couple of quick questions. First, I know we saw the letter from the one resident. There's only 6 residents affected. Have we reached out to all 6? Do we have an idea of what was it really just one resident asking for this, or did the 6 get together?
As part of the request, I believe everybody is on board. I'm pretty certain most would take advantage.
Right. And also, I know you say it's a relatively short stretch, and it is, from that corner of Marlene to Mount Diablo, but is there a reason that we are putting the permit kind of in everything, the entire stretch there, kind of extending into the businesses instead of just mostly in front of the residents themselves, which theoretically would be a more convenient location for them to park?
I think the idea was not to change the overall parking, and if a resident isn't parked in front of their home, we could have had just residential parking in front of their homes, but then that doesn't open it up for the businesses as well during the day when the residents are not parking in front of their
That's true. I was just thinking more
Yeah.
the permit part could be I just didn't know if that was considered.
Yeah, but then that would be maybe like reserved for permits only. And again, if you're at the car wash or at Ace Hardware, you could park a little ways down the street if that spot is available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the report. I think it's pretty clear, but I just want to clarify that today before us, there's not any change to the 2-hour parking limitations. That's, as you said, decades old, and that there's no change happening to that.
That's not part of this item. That's correct.
Okay, so what we're talking about is whether those 6 homes there can apply and have a special residential permit to park longer than 2 hours, but no longer than 72 hours in that place. And it's sort of a narrow ask today, just related to those 6 homes.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and we're not talking about any changes to enforcement. It's just the 6 homes.
It's just the 6 homes for the residential parking request.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay, thanks for those questions. I have no further questions, but, oh, you do. Okay.
Just in terms of general practice with parking restrictions, I know the 2 hours is very common in a purely retail area. Do you know, going back, what the history was, why this was determined to be a 2-hour area?
Just in general, they needed turnover. You might have had people that were parking there all day, whether they were residents, employees, or whomever, and they just needed the turnover. And again, that is mostly in retail, but I would say that every place we've instigated parking restrictions, there was a request to do so and a reason, because those parking places were not available to people that wanted to use them. So, and it does vary. You know, you can have 4-hour parking. There's some 30-minute parking around the corner at Ace Hardware, right in front of the store, for the first 100 feet or so. But it's just usually geared towards what works often for the business, but the area in general.
Okay, so we will have consulted with the businesses.
Yes, all of those businesses were within our noticing, and as you've seen, we've heard from some of them and even solicited comment from some of them so that they could weigh in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just no other questions. We'll move for public comment.
Mayor is taking public comments on item 13A, and I have 2 speaker slips for persons in the meeting hall. Our first speaker is Jess Wellen, to be followed by Laura Lamotte, and you each have 3 minutes.
Council, my name is Jess Wellen, 941 Oakview Circle, Lafayette. Just to clarify the one point, so far, I have never been noticed for this resolution. I'm there 5.5 days a week. Nobody called me. And so I had no notice until I read it in the internet as a resolution for the meeting. But I'd like to read my statement. I'm the owner of the Lafayette Car Wash Detail Center, one of the oldest and most active businesses in Lafayette, and a resident in Lafayette. I do not object to the permits for residents between Mount Diablo and Marlene. However, I do propose a different solution, which is removing all 2-hour parking restrictions on the subject street for the following reasons. There are no retail businesses on this street that need restrictive parking, as it's true for the downtown. There would be no need for permits to exempt residences from 2-hour parking if we eliminated it. There is a need to allow unrestricted parking for my 60 low-wage employees at the car wash and other non-retail businesses. These employees have been using this parking with no enforcement for as long as I have owned the business, which is 35 years. 2 office buildings across the street, 1080 and 1078 Carroll, have their own parking lot with approximately 20 spaces each. Subway across the boulevard has a parking lot with 26 spaces. Ace has 2 parking lots at the store and the annex. Greg's Muffler, Big O, German Auto, Diablo Services, Lafayette Auto have parking on site. The car wash employees leave the parking spaces by 5:30 after closing time of 5 o'clock. The car wash has been there since 1965, and I've owned it for 35 years. It has always had the ability to have employees park on the street unrestricted. Note also that the Lafayette Park Hotel, with a similar situation of approximately 100 employees, has no restricted parking across the street from them. I'd like to read Nick's statement from the Park Hotel, the summary, which I believe is good. I strongly believe that imposing a 2-hour parking limit in our industrial zone would create more problems than it solves. I ask the council take into consideration the unique needs of this area and explore more appropriate solutions that would neither hinder the operation of local businesses. I would also say that the 6 houses that are on that street, only 2 of them have appropriate parking off-street. The ones on the east side have no parking in front of their houses. In fact, one of them doesn't even have an entrance or an exit on the street we're talking about. So it's only the 2 houses next to the pool, and they seem to have a need for parking, but I would be glad to have all of my employees not park there anymore, which would solve their problem. But the
You're over your 3 minutes. Thank you, though.
okay. Any questions?
Yes, please.
Whatever you, okay.
Councilmember
Oh,
McCormick.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. A couple of follow-up questions. You say you have 60 employees.
Yes.
Do we have 60 cars on the street at one time, or what? How many people need to park at one time?
It varies because some people don't have a car or they carpool together, but they fill up most of the spaces in that subject strip of the boulevard we're talking about.
And to your knowledge, do they currently park in front of the residences that we are, at least the residences that have parking along the street?
I do believe in those two residences, there might be as many as 2 or 3 parking spaces in the front of their, which is not their driveway.
And to clarify your counter proposal here, you're saying,
I say eliminate the 2-hour parking, which would be similar to what's across from the hotel, because we're in an industrial and business area where we don't have to have frequency of movement. There are no dress shops, there are no toy stores. Nobody has to have the constant movement of the cars so they can shop there. It's industrial where we have employees we have to worry about.
right.
If my employees could not find a place to park, we could not do business. And the same might be true with other businesses.
I'm trying to understand that. Are you also saying you would also say would keep the spaces in front of the residences free from the employee parking? I guess I'm trying
I
to
could do that. That has not been a subject yet.
Okay.
But they would not need then a permit because we wouldn't have 2-hour. But I could also accommodate the fact that we would not park in front of those 2 houses. It's not 6, it's only 2.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ray.
Are you concerned, let's say that the 2-hour was removed, do you have any concern that the residents parking would take spaces then that employees might otherwise take?
No, I don't, that doesn't seem to have been a concern. They just wanted to make sure they had nobody parking in front of their house.
But from your perspective?
I would not be concerned about that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there no questions? Okay. Okay, thanks for those questions.
Laura Lamont?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Laura Lamont at 1065 Carroll Lane, with a little frog in my throat. The history of the ticketing on the street has been that maybe every 3 years or 4 years, we would get a ticket, maybe every 4 years for parking in front of our house. So it's largely not been enforced. But more recently, it has been enforced. So that's why we thought, oh, we need to get, parking permits for our cars. So let's see, we usually have, in front of my house and the house next to me, we each have 3 parking spaces in front. And they're usually full every day, I would say. And we get people from the car wash parking in front, which is fine. It's no problem. Sometimes I can't get a space in front of my house and I park up the hill, but everything's pretty much been working out. The thing that's tricky here is we're sort of looking into the future, trying to figure out what would happen in this scenario and what would happen in that scenario. If we got rid of the 2-hour parking limit and had no limit whatsoever, I'm not sure if people would really start parking in front of our house? Like, has the fact that the sign been up, the sign's up that says 2-hour parking, does that deter some people from staying all day? I don't know. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe it's better for us to just get the permit and keep the 2-hour parking up there, but it's, again, it's hard to know. The, as far as parking spaces going around for everybody, I think the swim school seems to be set. The car wash needs spaces. They used to have spaces on their property, but they took them out and put some detailing tents there years ago. So they have less spaces than they used to. That's about all I can think of right now. Yeah. So,
Thank you, Mrs. Lamont.
okay.
Is there questions from council? Well, thank you for your comments.
Mayor Dawson, I have no additional speakers at this time.
All right, thank you. I'll bring this back. All right, any,
I can start if you
yes,
want.
please.
I think it's good. I think it's kind of interesting. We don't really know because it seems like it's hard. It doesn't like there's a baseline because the enforcement's been inconsistent. So we don't really have a baseline to figure out how we can compare it to. It is a little concerning. I understand how this happens because people who rent buildings are not the the owners of the buildings where something our notifications get sent to. Unfortunately, it sounds like, I mean, the businesses that's most impacted by this is the car wash, and he was not kind of informed and couldn't participate in maybe the Trans-Circ meeting that I'm sure he presumably would have if he had known about it. And so given he's like the business that's most significantly impacted, it feels difficult, and it's hard to kind of look at all the nuances in a city council meeting. If that's where it feels like if there is an alternate solution, it almost has to, I feel like we don't have, there's not enough facts or we don't really have an idea how to change it. But it's unclear that the proposal is right, given that car wash hasn't had a chance to weigh in until this particular point in the process. So it's just a concerning to me that they haven't been involved from the beginning.
Any other comments on that? Yeah.
Well, the other thing, I'm just going back to the basics here as to why we have this policy. And it seems, maybe times have changed because we're looking at the two major employers in the area who are asking that we not maintain this policy. So maybe since the time we adopted it to now, the circumstances have changed. The two major businesses are ones that don't need that type of turnover. In fact, the hotel is saying that if they, people come for conferences and they don't want to have to run out and move their car in order to not miss the meeting. But I agree with Councilmember McCormick. We can't do anything tonight. I just think we need to take a deeper look and have Trans-Circ look at this with Mr. Welland's input, the hotel input, think about whether we still need that 2-hour parking. We definitely can't make any change tonight because we haven't heard from the residents on that issue because they weren't expecting that to be raised. So I think we need to go back and look at the situation at the Trans-Circ level.
So what is before us is just 6 parking permits for the residents, and taking into consideration Mr. Wellens and obviously the comment from the Plaza Hotel that they're looking to just be rid of the 2-hour parking restrictions. I think that can still happen. And in my opinion, we can still look at, in the meantime, allowing the parking permits for the residents. I mean, I think they're two different things almost in a sense. I will say that I do know, and thanks to Patrick Gullier for getting this a grant for doing a parking study, which is a big deal, to look at exactly issues like this of how there's parking around the city and the residential areas that, are obviously right in and right outside of the downtown strip. So that's coming, and that may be a good time to look at this
Does that grant cover?
Could I speak to that?
Yes,
And-
please.
and so, Councilmember Anduri, to exactly that point, and thank you for bringing that up, Mayor. There is a current parking study that is going to include from Risa Road to Pleasant Hill Road along Mount Diablo Boulevard. Patrick did get a grant for it. It's being done by outside consultants. And honestly, rather than going through Transcirc and coming up with our own, what would we look at? They're looking at a citywide. So to the comment of maybe the needs have changed, that's exactly what they're looking at. And it does actually include this section of Carroll Lane and spurs off of Mount Diablo Boulevard, as you would expect for the core area parking. So that is ongoing. I think that in 6 months, you might have that study. Please don't hold me to the exact time frame, but I think that is about the time frame. So there will be more information on not just what you might do at, Carroll Lane at Mount Diablo Boulevard, but even more downtown and even towards the west end. And it's going to look at like shared uses and exactly things like if every employee parked here all day, what would happen? Or if you didn't have these employees parking here all day, what would happen? And, is there a residential need for this? This residential permit program has been in place for a while, and it's just the mechanism the city has used. But to the same point, we have not added a new area in quite some time either. So conditions may be changed, and that study is probably going to speak the best to it.
Yeah, so I think right now we're in front of us as being responsive to the petition by the residents. And this has gone through Transcirc and it's recommended. And what the business owners do bring up is very good points, but it's a larger issue that we will be come back to us in a studied way with the parking study. So just want to put that
I
out.
have a question for staff, and that is, on this upcoming parking study that's being conducted in our city, is there an opportunity for public engagement, and could those businesses participate? When would they be notified to participate, and so forth?
So I believe yes, and I don't know on the when. Again, if I were Patrick, I'd probably have a better answer for you. Sorry, I'm not.
But in the months ahead, in the
Yes, it would be in the
3 to
months
4
ahead.
to 5 months ahead.
There is always a public engagement point, but I will say that it's an independent consultant looking at this, and I don't know what methods they're using. Like, are they doing very intense surveys of every business, every home, and so forth? I don't know what mechanisms they're using. So,
Right,
again,
but at least through today's hearing and the Transcirc on this topic, there's been a good bit of information brought up about Carroll Lane and the needs of some of those businesses. It could contribute to their research and recommendations for that area.
yes, very true.
Yeah, I just want to go back to when this was announced. It was sent out, Patrick sent a note that this would be happening and then it would be a study that would be in front of and definitely have public engagement on. It's an MTC grant with no matching local funds. So it was a big win. It was a big win, and I really do appreciate Patrick going after that. So because we're a priority development area, this is very important to the development of Mount Diablo, as Mike was saying, from Risa to Pleasant Hill. So I imagine it will be fairly comprehensive, and we, as per our tradition, definitely have public engagement and appropriate commissions looking at it as well.
I guess in response to Councilmember McCormick and Anduri, am I hearing that you would prefer to not make a decision on what's on hand today? Or I would say that I'm prepared today to there's a limited scope presented to us about 6 homes that would like a sticker for $51 a year to park in front of their house. And at an expense of doing so, that would be quite modest to the city to put the signage there to do that. We're not talking about changing any of the 2-hour rules or anything else. And so I could see voting in favor of accommodating those families for what's in front of us, knowing that we got feedback on a wider question about 2-hour parking that Fortunately, there is a study and a professionals looking into it. We can give feedback, but if the fastest that would be is a 6-month before a recommendation happened, it might be a year before anything actually happened to make a change. So to ask the residents, they could wait a year, but they don't, I think the cost seems to be, minimal, and the impact to the businesses, they were not objecting to this. So I would be willing to support the staff recommendation today without pushing it back into Transcirc or waiting another year to decide, for example.
I think the core of the issue from saying, I think again, I think the regularity and the significance of the enforcement is the challenge, right? Because I'm hearing like, well, slightly conflicting things. It's been a 2-hour zone forever, but it really has never been enforced. I think presumably the worry is if you start putting a permit process in place, that's only worthwhile and effective if you are then also crank up the enforcement of the 2-hour zones up and down the street, which then where does that leave the parking for the employees? And I don't know where 20, 30, 40 cars go if the 2-hour parking. So I think that, I mean, to me, I think that, I guess I'm interpreting that's kind of like you can't have a permit, an enforceable permit, if you don't actually ratchet up and actually enforce the parking, the 2-hour limit, right?
I think it's also a matter of avoiding the ticket for those that are permitted. They just wouldn't get ticketed. So, understanding what you're saying, there's still those issues that are out there that will be studied and considered more holistically. But right now, it's just these 6 potential parking permits, depending on if they apply for them.
Let me ask Mike, was there any input from the Lafayette Car Wash at the Transcirc level?
There was not.
Yeah, see, that's what troubles me. It's the biggest lawyer in the area.
No, I understand. I appreciate Mr. Wellen's comment and the Plaza's comment, but I think what both of them have said in their comments actually is that they don't object to this permit application process, but they do have other concerns about the 2-hour parking enforcement in general. And that's something that has been in place, granted inconsistently, but that we do, I believe, need to reconsider with other areas of town, I have no doubt. So I guess what I'm saying is without taking in those concerns into consideration, we're still just looking at these 6 parking permits to alleviate the residents' concern for getting ticketed in front of their home, parking in front of their home.
Or I think Mr. Wellen's, his letter was like, it's okay for the permit, but then remove the 2-hour. I don't think he was saying it's okay to keep the 2-hour and put the permit. I think that's
a larger issue that we are
I know that's a larger
considering
issue,
now.
but
And yeah.
I just worry then if it's going to go 6 months or a year, we don't even know. We're waiting for a parking study that may or may not shed any light on the situation. I just don't know if it's, I hate to wait for that because it's unclear.
Well, this is an annual parking pass.
Right.
And I think that's a separate issue, enforcement and looking into that. And, granted, it even sounds from the resident that it's been fairly inconsistent, but they're looking proactively into the future. So I'm sorry, we've closed public comment, but we will welcome more responses if you would like. But so I guess with Vice Mayor's suggestion or question, does it sound like you are not ready then to consider this narrow?
It's kind of
that's in front
confusing.
of us?
It feels like we have a large business in town. If we have the 2-hour parking enforced, we've got dozens of cars or have to move every 2 hours or get ticketed potentially, right, along that entire stretch, right? If we decide to enforce the law, which we're supposed to. I mean, and so I just don't know. I'm not sure how that business is supposed to conduct their business with that. You can't have employees leaving every 2 hours to move their car.
Mayor Dawson, I want to clarify, and I think we've discussed this as well, but I'm a little concerned that we're getting off the agenda topic.
Yes, and that's why I want to come back to, this is a narrow item in front of us. And we can bring that item back about enforcement, or whether it be enforcement or the parking question in general. But right now, it is just the parking permits. And we did get public comment for that, and it went through TransCirc. So I just, to follow up on Vice Mayor Kwok's question, are you able to consider this now, or would?
My concern is, while you can characterize it as just being the permits, it really exists in this ecosystem
It does.
of restriction, enforcement or non-enforcement, and needs of the businesses and needs of the residents. And because it's complex, and I'm concerned that one major factor was not considered at TransCirc, I would rather have that heard at TransCirc and then come back to us.
To be clear, what would you like Councilmember Unduri to be heard? Is it the issue of the 2-hour parking?
I'd like them to consider the permits in light of comments from the owner of the Lafayette Car Wash. Because if it, let's say that the testimony there is it creates a major problem, if there is a 2-hour continued enforcement of the 2-hour restriction, and then these permits allow even more parking, let's say hypothetically 6 parking spaces per day to be filled, what kind of issue does that raise? And I don't think the TransCirc has heard that.
I can agree that if we want to push this back to TransCirc with those considerations, then they can come back with the recommendations, that would be fine. So if, I could see it going 2 ways, but as always, we want to be transparent, and we want to also give people the opportunity to have comment where there can be other decisions made potentially. So I'm willing to place it back in TransCirc's hands. Do you have other comments about that, or?
I have no objection.
Okay, I think, Mike, thank you for the presentation. And I thank you all for your comments, because, anything we do to figure out solutions that brings more information out, we can come up with better solutions. So this will just be a delayed response, and hopefully maybe a more comprehensive response. Because even if there were permits, they would probably be annually. It would go to about this time next year, when maybe we'll actually have the parking study complete. So with feedback on that, so we can hope for that. But okay, so we'll go back to TransCirc.
Mayor Dawson?
Thanks very much.
Maybe it would help if, and I would ask Mike as well, if we could continue to a date certain, so that the noticing that we've already done doesn't have to be renoticed. Would that be helpful?
The noticing for tonight or the noticing for TransCirc?
The noticing for tonight, because this was a public hearing.
It was a
and
public
so-
hearing. It did get the notifications and the noticing.
So my suggestion is, like we do for our planning commission issues, is if you have an idea of when you think this might come back to council.
Well,
If you
they
do
would-
not, then
if it goes to TransCirc, it first and third Mondays, I would think we'd put it on the next one. It'd be the second meeting in October, probably. We'd need more than a week in between.
So October 28th, is that correct?
Okay, I'm just looking at the TransCirc. So TransCirc so far does have those meetings on schedule. Okay. So if they have 2 meetings, it would either be the 7th or the 21st. So if it was one of those, will be in time for the 28th, do you think?
Yeah, for it to make the 7th, right, well, the 28th being the council, right?
Right.
You're saying the 21st being TransCirc?
Right, 7th and 21st are
So
TransCirc.
usually our staff reports to council or for council are due more than a week before. So that
That's
would
true.
put us into the first meeting in November, unless we can get this to TransCirc, the first
Okay.
meeting in October.
Take it to TransCirc October 7th?
I think we could, because this has been there already.
Okay. So,
That's what I would suggest, is we go the first meeting to Trans-Circ. Yeah.
okay. So this will be continued to a date certain of October 28th.
That could be a motion, Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will move that we continue this until a date certain, October 28th.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we will bring this back. Thank you again, Mike. Thank you for our public comments and the letters received. Okay. Next, we will continue to items removed from the consent calendar. So we'll move to 10A.
I had removed 10A and Councilmember Quack had removed 10A and Councilmember Anduri, had you moved 10A as well?
Oh, 10B.
10B.
Okay, so you want to go first, Wei Tai?
Sure. On item 10A, which are minutes from the past meeting, I have two corrections to offer. One on page 16 under my ex parte disclosure, where I mentioned a meeting with the Circle K architect, Mr. Ibrahim. I had also mentioned that Mr. Mike Amati, the owner of GOFCO, and another staff member named Mike were present as well. Those two Mikes were not included in the minutes, and I request they be added. On page 19, there's reference to the youth commissioner appointee. Leonard Kupa is a typo. It should be Levand Kupa, Levand Kupa. Just a correction in the first name. That's it.
Then my corrections are, we inadvertently left off public comments by Mario DePrisco, which read as follows. As a candidate for city council this November, he wanted to share that there were a series of house parties where everyone is invited to ask questions, share ideas and concerns on city-related issues. This invitation is extended to council members and staff. Times and dates of these parties are on my webpage, deprisco.org. If people are unable to attend, there is information on ways they can contact him. Like many residents, he's excited about an Iron White Festival and happy to see the city will have a booth there. He feels that good outreach and communication is part of what makes Lafayette special. Thank you for all you do. Like to add that.
Thank you for those corrections to the minutes and additions. All right. There's no other comments on that. Then we will move to 10B. And that was the government award.
Do you want to approve those minutes?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I'll move to approve item 10A minutes as amended.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 The minutes are approved. And item 10B, Councilmember Anduri, you pulled that?
I didn't want this.
Yeah.
I didn't want this to go by without saying, great work. Each year we say, wow, you're really putting the pressure on, because now this is the 9th straight year.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure to make 10. So, but this is a great achievement, and it's just the fact that the city, the commitment to excellence and transparency and financial reporting is just backed up by a lot of hard work, and it's recognized. So it's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Jennifer. That's a lot of detail and a lot of reporting out. And, we can't get what we want to get done without that fine detail, and just appreciate that work. And obviously that's the highest award you can get for that. So we're just very proud of you. Thank you. All right. We move to adopt them. Oh,
Okay,
would you
all right, you got it.
like to move to adopt? Anyone?
I move to adopt item 10B of the
So,
consent calendar.
And then, is that a second by Councilor Anduri? Did I hear?
we adopting?
It just says.
We are accepting the certificate of
Yeah.
achievement.
Okay, well, second, whatever's out there, but
Okay.
we're just receiving and filing.
Well, we pulled it off. That's true. We're receiving it. So we'll will receive it with pride and appreciation. There you go. There we go. It's on the record. And now we will move on to, where are we here? The council member and commission reports. Any reports from council members?
Well, I'm sorry that Mike has left the room because I
Oh.
just want to say the engineering department has done an incredible job this summer on the surfacing and the restriping and then the new signage at the roundabout, the simple, signage. So just a great job. So that's one thing. And then second, I want to remind everybody that this year, the day at the library is going to be Saturday, October 20th. That'll be during the day at the library. And then night at the library, for which a ticket is required, that's November 2nd, Saturday, November 2nd. So encourage everyone to participate in that event as well.
Thank you. Any other reports? Oh, well, I just want to second what the city manager said. It was an amazing art and wine festival. We are very grateful to the chamber for all that work and, from the staff, board members, the members, all the volunteers. It was just well-oiled machine, I know, after all these years, but it's always a new production each year. So we're very happy. It was just an incredible outpouring. People came, really wanted to grab the Love Lafayette, swag, which is wonderful. It just goes to show that it also has a sense of pride there. And we're glad to promote it in such a happy, joyful way in our beautiful city. So thanks for that. All right. Any public comments? No, thank you. In that case, we'll move to written communications. Item 16. And this is for designation of a voting delegate for the League of California Cities Annual Conference. So the recommendation to discuss. And I do want to note that Councilmember Kendall is not here, but she will be attending.
Is anybody else from the city council attending?
I am not.
No.
No, so that may make this designation fairly easy. So, so actually, it's interesting. So I would like to, for someone that in that case, if there's any questions about this, we'll move into public comment, then go.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we have to designate alternates or can we, okay, we can say it's Susan or nobody. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, I knew Councilmember Kendall was going, so I was gonna suggest that as the logical choice, so.
Okay. All right, then I will move to any public comments.
No public comments on this item, Mayor Dawson?
Okay, then I'll bring it back. And anybody like to move on that? Well, in the meantime, I'm looking for my meeting notes here. Here we go.
Well, it's a
Unanimous.
discuss and direct staff, but I suppose we could, do you want a motion?
Yes.
Yes, so I move that we appoint Susan Kendall, Councilmember Kendall, to represent the city of Lafayette at the League of Cities, California Cities Annual Conference on October 16th through 18th as the city's voting delegate.
And can I, just to make clarity for the league, and can we go on to say, and there are no alternates?
Fill out a form and it has the slot for the voting delegate and alternate, and all I put on the alternate is none.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so my
So I'll
motion
second.
as amended with no
Well,
alternate.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am an aye, so we will appoint Councilmember Kendall, and thank you to Councilmember Kendall for putting herself forward for that and attending League of Cities on our behalf. And then we will move on to item 16B, which is the resolution that will be considered at the conference. And it is basically a resolution, as noted in the staff report, for fair and equal, well, the agenda, fair and equal treatment of all government officials at all levels. So are there any questions or comments about this from our council?
Sure, I'll comment, and I think this is, I did read this with great interest. It sounds quite interesting to do something equal, and I guess the devil is in the details, right? It's interesting that the staff of the League of Cities provided an analysis but no recommendation on whether to, how to vote on it. They did, however, raise at least 4 items of concern of details, right? Of maybe unintended consequences, or how maybe a simple idea is actually not that simple to implement. And so that caused me a bit of pause to also think, like, obviously things have been set up in a certain way, which may not be equal for everybody, but it is set up in a certain way. And I wonder whether a resolution of this nature, which just tries to make everything, with one fell swoops cleanly to try to change it, would it cause actually more problems than it intended to do? So I think it's well intended, just concerned that how much has it been really discussed and thought through, and are we really ready as a city to vote affirmatively on this yet? And I would say I don't feel comfortable at this juncture to vote in favor of it, although I think the idea is very good. I think it's just something that merits a lot more discussion statewide and beyond the 5 signatories from Southern California who are proposing this. So I would therefore I would not vote in favor of this at this time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was concerned with the analysis, particularly the part of the analysis that said the final sentence of the proviso or the active part of it may undo the rest of it. So with that kind of concern being raised, I don't see how we can go forward.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And I agree, because it was even that, you're absolutely right, that last sentence, it just was like, it gave me pause. And the support is grouped down in Southern California. It'd be nice to have a little more statewide kind of distribution on this. So in that case, it sounds like I'm hearing we don't have support to right now to maybe recommend to Councilmember Candell that she vote in favor of this at this point. And is that what this is looking for? Just, can we have clarification on that?
You're going to want to tell Councilmember Candell how you would like her to vote, and you would like her to oppose this.
Yeah, okay.
Either oppose or abstain. Yeah.
All right. So then that we should note that in our direction, we would ask Councilmember to oppose or abstain from the vote. Okay. Oh, one of the two. Well, what would,
I would think that an abstention
Yeah.
is de facto an opposition as a practical matter, right? You would need favorable votes of a certain percentage, I guess. Is it a simple majority? But I think an abstention is essentially a no. So I guess it's really about messaging. What does an abstention message versus a no? I'm happy to abstain in the spirit of.
That's what I was thinking. I think given the context.
I'm glad somebody brought this topic up. I'm glad that the statewide we would discuss this important topic, but maybe not jump on it and approve it right now. So as opposed to saying, no, we didn't like it in the first place, I would be open to abstaining.
Agreed.
I'm agreed. Looks like there's nodding of heads here that we will direct Councilmember Candell to abstain from this vote. I agree. There would be good to have more discussion and more information about it. And I'm sure that will happen at the League of Cities. So, okay, thank you for the discussion. And Joanne, do we need anything else for that? Okay, gave direction. Thank you. Then with that, we are moving on to the next item, which is adjournment of today's meeting. So thank you all.
Great.
And we are officially adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's 8:30. Whoops.